afternoon. Welcome to the January 29, believe it or not. Meeting of the Flathead Reservation Water Management Board. So welcome. Anyone here? Anyone online? First thing I want to mention, and I know we go through up to 1.6 and then adopt the agenda, but before, so we can talk about it now or talk about it at that point. One of the things we mentioned was we wanted to do the election of officers, and that's not on here. I'd like to add that. So would you like to add it now, or should we wait until we adopt the agenda?
Is that up to us or?
I think we just decide where it goes on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
I think that's a good idea. I'd insert it maybe after the adoption of the minutes, maybe.
1:15.
So
Mr. Chairman, board members, you could put that under item 4, board business.
I'd like to get it done early so that if, we have a new chair, that chair can-
My apologies, sir.
can take it. So, because I was gonna suggest we do it as 1.1.5
Oh, all right.
or 1.6.5.
I think 1.5 would feel smoother.
1.1.5
No, 1.5.
after 1.5.
Yes.
So 1.5.5.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, given that, opening prayer, please. George, would you
Sure,
bless us, please?
go ahead and say a prayer. Dear Lord Jesus, thank you for allowing us all to be here today. Help us to work together in a good way, treat each other all well, protect and guide us, help us make wise decisions. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, George.
Amen.
Okay, meeting minutes can always be found at www.FRWMB.gov. Attendance, please.
Clayton Matt,
Here.
Roger Noble,
Here,
George McLeod,
Here,
Ken Pitt,
Here.
and Georgia Smees and Shane Hendrickson are absent.
Thank you. Potential conflicts of interest. George?
no,
None.
no comment.
Roger? None here. Thank you. So we want to adopt the meeting minutes of 1:15:25 and then 1:22:25. So 1:15:25 first, please. When you're ready, take a motion to.
I got one modification I'd make to this,
Roger.
under 3.3, where it says budget committee formed. Should probably say budget committee reinstated, because it was already formed. It was just kind of brought back again to life.
Instead of form, say
reinstated.
reinstated.
Yeah.
Board members good at that?
Yes.
Yes,
So be it.
Otherwise, I guess I'm good with the minutes as provided with that modification, so I'll make a motion to accept.
I'll second it.
Motion by Roger to accept with the suggested change. Second by George. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Hearing none, approved. Meeting minutes of January 22.
So I'll make a motion, or I'll make a revision to add in 1.5.5 election of officers. And also under 3.2, just an addition, budget projection discussion for FY 2025.
So let's say, so we're looking at January 22,
Mhm.
January 22 meeting minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead.
We've got one more set of minutes to approve.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that.
January 22, no worries.
Yeah, those in your packet, just remember.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve minutes for January 22nd, 2025.
Motion by Ken,
I'll second it.
second by George, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None approved. So I know we, just for organization's sake, talked about where to plug in the election, but I think you said 1.5, I think probably it's better at 1.6 or make it a 1.7. So that we adopt the agenda with that on there
Yeah.
and then take that. So we'll make
Okay.
that a 1.7.
7.
So adopting the agenda, so modifications to the agenda, so we'll agree to do 1.7. Is officer election.
And then just for clarification, 3.2, I guess it says 2025, yeah, okay, I'm good.
We're good?
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments or changes to the agenda before we adopt it?
Mr. Chairman, board members,
Ethan,
we didn't quite get, we had some aspirational items under personnel policy, excuse me, under personnel policies, and should we get there, I wanted to let you know that, items 7.4, 7.5, and 7.6 are not ready for, your review. So, I would,
so the suggestion is to scratch those items.
yes, sir,
from
if
this agenda.
that's acceptable.
Board members, for 7.4, 7.5, and 7.6. According to the OE are not ready. Can we scratch those?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. They are scratched. Any other comments or changes to this agenda? If none, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as modified.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move that we adopt the agenda as modified.
Motion by George. Second by Ken, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none approved. Election of officers. Well, and I am happy if one of you want to be chair.
I think you're doing a great job. I would nominate Clayton to continue as the chair.
And that being the case, I would accept. If you wanna take your vote for it, you're on the record.
Sure.
Um,
Sydney, you wanna do a roll call vote?
Yeah, of course. Roger Noble,
Yes.
George McGowan,
Yes.
Ken Pitt,
yes.
Clayton Knapp.
Yes. All right. Cool. Thank you. Vice Chair. You still game?
Yeah.
I think you've been doing an excellent job too.
Also,
Nominate Roger for Vice Chair.
I'll nominate Roger for vice chair.
Okay. Ken nominates Roger for Vice Chair. No other nominations?
Second.
We could, okay, we'll nominate Georgia since she's up to here to say no. I'll let you do that and, I wanna watch when she, finds out.
Who did that?
Okay, George makes a motion to approve Roger as vice chair. I'll second. Ken seconds that. All in favor, say aye.
I
Aye.
thank
Any
you both.
opposed?
Good job.
Hearing none. All right. Do we have other officers? That's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
You could add one if you wanted to.
No. Let's keep it simple. I just want to make sure we cover what we have. All right, guys. Thank you. And it is much appreciated. I mean, it is sometimes a challenge, but always an honor to be here and try to do the best we can to make this work. Honor working with you and honor working with all the staff we have. Much appreciated, Ethan and all the staff. Much appreciated. All right, any public comments for items not on the agenda? Does our public have a comment or one public? No comment. He says none. Anybody online?
If anyone online would like, from the public would like to make a comment, please raise your hand and I will allow you to speak. Saying no public comment.
No public comment at this time. We'll have more comment later in the agenda. Item number 3, budget update.
Do you want, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Noble, would you like me to talk through this or?
Yeah, no, sure, yeah.
Okay.
Whoever has it, please do.
Today, the finance director is out. And so you have a couple items in front of you. The first item was provided a request of Vice Chair Noble and is the profit and loss documents, of which there are 3 pages. I'm not particularly not overly informed about these. We got them a little bit last minute, but I think that they generally go through and describe our expenses from October to 23 to December 24. Then there's also a profit loss sheet for, I'm sorry, balance sheet as of December 31st.
But maybe, I assume then that this profit loss statement is done in advance of our submitting budget information to the state and receiving the funds from the state and the tribe.
Yeah, so I thought when the very first item on this agenda was the 2024 budget information update, I thought Ethan was gonna give us just an update on that. I think all that stuff got submitted to the funding parties. And they're in receipt of it. And then I see, yeah, did they have any comment, Ethan, on what was submitted?
Vice Chairman, board members, so we did successfully, submit part one of a two-part budget submission that, included what the board had approved, and, then, that also let the parties know that today, hopefully you'd be approving the second portion of that, and, they, have responded by, we're in the process of setting up a meeting to get together and review both, the first submission and the follow-up submission, which, I anticipate, when we take a look at the 2025, you'll probably find something we can move forward.
Yeah. So I guess what I was gonna say then is part one, like you said, was the reconciliation of everything we've done, which included through fiscal year 2024. And so I typically at the end of a fiscal year, you have a P&L and a balance sheet to look at. So I don't think Tina's probably looked at this yet, so it would be nice to have her review it, but just to make sure everything's consistent. So balance sheet, you know, your assets are supposed to match your liabilities. That looks good there. So the P&L, it shows we have a lot more expenses than income, which is due probably because I don't know if the allotment was included in this P&L or not, but so we would need to talk to Tina or maybe Rhonda knows, but anyway, so that may explain why there's such a large negative amount at the end.
All right, in summary, part one budget was submitted to the state. Correct? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And a minor, I should just do it. As a minor correction, we did do the actuals for all of the periods except for the period of July 1 to September 30th, which we held off for the second submission. So they would have received the actuals for all other periods of operation other than from July 1st moving forward. And we have that, which is in part of your budget documents that you'll take a look at for that portion of the agenda for the next submission.
And that's this memo,
Yes, sir.
and
That would be a memo on 3 pages.
so that would be the part two.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
And this other part, I would have done a little better. We just kind of got it last minute, so.
So that's
time
fine.
to digest.
So just a suggestion. Can we have Rhonda and or Tina provide us with an email explanation of these documents?
Certainly.
Would that work for the board? Roger nodding yes. Ken? Yes.
Yes.
So Georgia, welcome. Hi.
Thanks.
So we're on to, oh, and by the way, you were elected chair, so.
I'm leaving.
No.
I can.
Sorry, I'm late, but the meetings that were scheduled for me today got
I thought you'd want it.
What's that?
When I nominated you, I thought you'd want it.
We'll have a chat later.
That's, I said, I want to see that. So we're on the budget update, and so there are some documents that are submitted here. The summary is that we have submitted a part one budget to the state. we need to submit a part two. That part two is in this memo form that we have in our packet.
Okay,
We have not taken action on that yet. The other information we have in front of us is a profit and loss statement and a balance sheet summary. We do not have clear picture of what that is, but I was just suggesting that we have Rhonda and or Tina provide a narrative explanation of these to the board after today's meeting. If that works for you, then if they could follow up with us on that, that would be helpful. And then we can move on to our discussion and conclusion of this part two. So would that work for everyone? Yes. Okay. So given that, and it says here, budget projection discussion, is that this? So is it actually budget projection or is it, or the agenda item goes 3.2?
Yes, so
That is this memo
that is this memo, and there are 3 documents following
attached to it.
that memo, and I can't explain these. Yes, and so could Vice Chair.
So let's go on to this document then. So we're under this document, with this memo and its attachments. So yes, please, go ahead.
Excellent. Okay, as with all things, board members that are in front of you, if you see something you don't like, you go ahead and scribble on here or let me know otherwise, and we can get those changes implemented before anything goes out the door. So even though I've signed this front letter, we can always make changes if you find something that needs to be addressed.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Haley, you have this?
Yes, I have that page and the financial information in front of me. Is that what we're working on right now? Just like the half sheet?
Yeah, the memo, January 30, 2025. About the second part of the budget submission, and then it's got attachments, 3 pages.
Perfect. Yep, I have that.
You have it. All right, go ahead. You can start.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the first bit at the top, it says FY 2025 FRWMB budget projection, and it's the, probably the main, driving budget document for this next fiscal period. What this has is the full complement of, possible expenses for the OE and the board. And, we have, annual salaries and positions, the positions track, staffing plan that this board has seen, along with its own direction about a financial director. We, wanted to retain the 35% indirect, which is, we all recognize that the 35% indirect will not really quite be like the way it's itemized for each position, but the total amount is something we want to retain in this FY 2025 budget for handling taxes, benefits, and other indirect expenses with salaries. The below the salaries area, we have a top line here that includes the total employee contracts. And that will be for contracts that this board has seen in front of it and concurred on. And those are set aside from salaried employees for this particular budget. And those are based on the finite status of those particular contracts and what their current duration is at and their compensation levels. We have line items for legal, board compensation from regular meetings, board compensation from committee meetings, accounting, bookkeeping, payroll, There's an item in here for an audit, which I believe the board wanted to retain the option to do an independent audit. There's a subsection for professional services that would include contracts for our IT, our website design and development, cleaning, security, other temporary contracts. We have general administrative subsection. That includes everything from office supplies to telecom, postage, printing, subscriptions, rent, building upgrades, utilities, insurance, company vehicle, travel training for board, travel training, conferences for staff, general meeting expenses, and miscellaneous expenses. And what you see at the bottom of the FY 2025 budget projection is this is all in direct relation to the matching appropriations from the tribes of the state of Montana. And it does designate, that our total projected 2025 budget does exceed this appropriation. And this is kind of the conclusion of our main operations page. Sorry to check my phone. Sometimes people text me about the meeting, sound quality during the meeting. Apologies. The second page to the budget includes accounting for carryover, which is a required feature for our funding agreement. And in this, on this page, we have the total carryover that was as of October 1, 2024 at the top. We contrast that carryover with the unfunded operations that we get off the FY 2025 budget. And then below that, you'll see a table of 4 individual funds that are entitled reserve funds. You've heard discussion of the reserve funds before, but we have reserve funds for litigation, liability, paid time off payout, and a building planning fund. We'll see the total amounts of those funds are designated. We have already funded some of those through the one-time $185,000 fund that was included in the previous year, but will not be included for our next installation of the funding agreement, that's how we end up with around 66,192 of funding for our total reserve funds, with the remainder being put over towards the carryover. That leaves us with the total of unfunded operations and reserve funds of $306,440. We add that with what we think will be a reasonable amount of one-time expenses for FY 2025, which is $97,879, which I would have gone with 100,000, but this neatly zeroes out the carryover. So I do believe we can make that one-time fund at the 97,879. We can make that pan out. So you'll see that would include things like contracted services for registrations, records processing, records retention, things that are earmarked expenses that we don't have in our general operations fund. With that general overview of these 2 main pages and the understanding that one is an annual operational piece and the other is more of a one-time and a fund funding and accounting of carryover. I'll do my best to answer your questions if you have any.
Questions? Um. Dive in here a little bit, unfunded operations. In the red, 222,632. What does that mean going forward into 2025?
Mr. Chairman, board members, 2025 will be interesting because part of the 2025 fiscal year has already occurred. So, and there's some clear reality that we'll have some vacancy savings and some other things, but the general approach for this was to have an annual budget that could be moved forward or shifted around to be compared with both federal, tribal, or state fiscal years. And so the approach that the budget committee came up with is this to retain an full annuals amount of funding. And so as we went forward, we probably might not hit that total 222,632 unfunding level because of certain vacancy savings that had already been experienced during the earlier portion of fiscal year 2025.
Let me see if I can add a little to that. So the unfunded operations, basically what we had up above that is if we were to fill all the positions are filled and fully we were had all of these expenses, our total budget necessary would be $1,363,000. However, the tri and the state provide $1,141,000 in annual funding. So that leaves us a deficit of 222,000. So then we have, but then like Ethan was saying, we've had considerable vacancy savings the past 2 or 3 years because all of those positions are not filled. And then we can make up that if we fill all those positions and operate as planned on the first page, we can cover that deficit with a portion of the carryover from the previous years. And that would still leave us a balance of 181,678. And so then we roll on down to then these other set asides or reserve funds that we've plugged in for future expenditures. And then even then with that if we cover those out of that 181,678, we still have a leftover amount of nearly $98,000. And even saying that we do have some other things under other types of contracted services or future contracted services that aren't accounted for on page 1 that could potentially, that money could potentially be used to cover those costs and bring this whole thing to a zero balance.
Mr. Chairman, board members, also as a stopgap, should you end fiscal year 2025 with carryover, that could then be applied again. We just need to account for it. So, that may almost be needed because if we get a full staffing level, we may need to have that to make up for that unfunded operations now.
That difference you described here, Actually doesn't show on this
No, it
paper.
doesn't. I had to run the numbers.
Should it?
It probably should, yeah.
So that might be something we want to clarify, so that the numbers as Roger described it, maybe we can clarify that a bit more. Just for the record,
Excuse me, was that the 97,879?
Yeah, well, it was the 181,678. So I can get with
it's
you.
not there, it's the 404 minus the 222.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I'm just being a little bit picky about showing red. And if there is red, how do we account for making it up? Just want to make sure it's clear.
Yeah, you bet.
If we submit this, somebody will ask. And we'll want to, so if we have it right up front, that'd be helpful.
Okay,
So,
I'll get with Ethan afterwards, and-
okay, is that,
or George and I can get with Ethan afterwards.
well, that helps me. Does that work for you guys?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
That's a good suggestion.
Makes sense.
Okay. All
If
right.
you have the question, someone else will too.
Yeah.
So,
Well, when we submit it, somebody will ask.
yeah.
So given that, we're looking for approval of this with those changes.
Mr. Chairman, board members, yes, I do, believe that the budget and the budget committee is here, so they will correct me if I've misspoken on this, but the intent here was to move forward with, an FY 2025 and its accompanying documentation that had the full approval of the board.
Okay. Haley, have you seen do you have any questions or comments?
No, I mean, not at this point.
Okay, what we described, does that make sense?
I think so. I mean, you wanna put this in the format, whatever, the board thinks is doable and for the compact parties and what they're looking for, so I think it sounds good.
Okay, are you ready for us to take action on this memo with those changes? Okay, any public comment? Okay, public comment on this memo and our submissions here, so anybody online or anybody in the audience have public comment?
If anyone online, has a comment, please raise your hand and I will allow you to speak. Seeing no public comment.
No public comment online, I see no public comment here in the audience. With that, you're ready to take a motion to approve this submittal with the suggested changes that will happen and clarifications, and then eventually re-signing this agreement, so.
I'll make a motion that we approve the fiscal year 2025 budget and the accompanying first quarter reconciliation. As modified, for our discussion.
Motion by Roger,
I'll second.
second by Georgia. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that's approved. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you to the budget committee. Another step in the process. Very good, guys.
It was really great working with, Georgia and Roger on that, so thank you.
Thank you.
Go team.
Board business, if any, I don't have anything extra. Does anybody on the board have anything extra? I don't. I want Roger to explain his liquid death. I don't know what that is. Is that an energy drink?
I don't know, I'll see.
I don't know yet. We'll find out in about an hour.
My son bought these and they were in the refrigerator and I thought, I'm just gonna grab one to take along.
Oh, very good. All right, you let us know.
Yeah.
All right, no other, board business at this time. We'll touch base again later. Office of the Water Engineer and staff updates, please.
Mr. Chairman, board members, updates are generally kind of brief from us, this go around. We have been very busy. Thank you, Sydney. Sydney has been running around crazy, just trying to keep up with everything, including, this meeting and getting things going. You'll see, we're trying to do a little bit of reorganization to, try to help some of your, the document organization and the meeting orchestration, run through Anna Butterfield. And so, please help us work through that as we make those transitions. And the idea is, because Sydney has got an insane amount of, water right activity on her plate right now, I'm trying to do, whatever we can to, alleviate her of a few items. So trying to route things through Anna. Will take a little bit longer because you'll have to remember she's not a 40-hour week employee, but I do believe that this will work as best as we can.
And we are getting emails from Anna. You guys all getting that? You guys getting your emails from Anna Butterfield? No. No?
Haven't.
I did.
I'll double check to see if we're getting stuff through to Ken or not,
And others, yeah, I guess. Is Anna online?
She is not.
Okay,
we knew that.
for the record, thank you, Anna, but, yeah, I did remember seeing the agenda we had for today was actually sent by her. If there was anything else, I didn't get anything else, but I did get the agenda from her. So anyway, double check. If you're not getting that, let us know, let Ethan know.
Yeah, and I will, in follow-up, I'll have Anna send out a test communication just to circle us all in, and I'll have her copy me to make sure, Ken, that if we have an issue, we get it resolved. Sometimes people do things like they type in a Ken and it goes to the wrong email address that they used to have, so maybe something like that occurred. We'll do our best though.
We'll get it. All right, thank you.
Okay, and so, we are seeing, otherwise just all sorts of work. Wireless is, very consuming, and that is eating up, almost 100% of, our two contract employees, James and Kathy, which was expected, and, part of why we had to get those contracts going, there. And it's, starting to eat a lot more of my time too, as we move forward on pretty substantive permissions issues and things. I expect that I'll have an update for the board, perhaps at your next meeting. We do not have a water right report for you today, which we like to provide, but we just had to have a few things drop off the plate for this period right now. I can at least give you a little bit of a staffing and a recruitment update. We do have two offers that have gone out. One has been informally accepted, and I would expect a follow-up of formal acceptance shortly thereafter. And the other one is very excited and tentative, but wants to talk through a few items. I would probably be having that phone call right now if I wasn't out here. So we're moving forward with those items. Some of the other ones we'll talk about later today.
Those positions are,
those will be two water resource specialists of different arrangements. One set up as a career ladder towards a hydrologist, a mid-level hydrologist position, and the other one set up as one of the permanent water resource specialists.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, unless you have any additional questions about office operations or anything, I do have one action item that I'd like you to consider.
Any questions on office update or 5.2 staffing?
Just excited.
Good, Roger?
Yeah.
But by the way, sometimes I forget to say things that I should say up here, but Roger and Georgia have been very helpful and instrumental in moving these things along and helping some of the important and difficult decision-making go forward. So thank you both for your contributions to that effect.
Building the car as we're flying down the road. Thank you, guys.
Sure.
Wonderful. Mr. Chairman, board members, for your consideration today, staff have twisted my arm, frankly, and told me that this is a much needed improvement. And so what you see here will be a parting gift from James Frakes as approved by Sidney Palmer. And there's been some consternation about, you'll know that our allowance applications all have a part A and a part B, right? So there's
So we're on to 5.3.
oh, I'm sorry, Mr.
Is that
Chairman,
correct?
I did just jump right in there. Yeah.
Well, that's okay. That's
Yes, sir.
5.3. All right, that's good. Thank you.
Okay. And so, some of the frustration is that means there's a whole bunch of extra forms on our website. It's hard to direct people to where we need them to get to, because, it's not quite as clear as everybody would like to have. In fact, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 separate Part B completion forms. And staff is like, hey, this is redundant. We can, it makes sense to have them as the initial application, but at the completion phase, once we've gotten through a lot of the items, we believe that we could consolidate everything into one, what they called an allowance notice of completion form. And, at first I was like, I don't know, we're doing other stuff and I don't want to do anything new. And they convinced me that this would actually perhaps save time because we're having people file the wrong completion forms and getting confused. And that if this would occur, our website would be cleaner. The follow-up on getting your allowance done would be cleaner. And so what you have here in front of you today is the allowance notice of completion form. And we've, even Anna Butterfield chimed in on this. Everybody really supports it. It's here for your consideration. There's nothing real earth shattering in here that you haven't already seen, because it just takes the components of other forms that you've already approved at that completion phase and puts them all into one, makes you check the box on what you're completing. None of these had money. You'll remember we have a process in which all of the application fees are paid at the Part A phase, and that the completion notice is not got a fee associated with it. And that was per board direction, so we wouldn't have to try to follow up with getting additional funds later. And that if we put staff time into an application and it didn't pan out, we would have already received the funding for that staff time. So that makes the funding part of it a little easier. And,
All right, so let me just jump in here.
yes, sir.
So I'm clear. It says, under number 3, allowance type. Individual domestic allowance, shared domestic allowance, development domestic allowance, stock water allowance, and geothermal heating cooling exchange well. Each of those had its own form. And what you're saying is, instead of having separate forms for each of those, we now have one form and you just check a box.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Perhaps more eloquent than I was offering.
No, just for clarity. Questions by the board?
I do, just semantics actually. Why, if this, what you just said, which I think is really good, why are we still listing the old forms then?
In here, they're listed in case there was some confusion. So we're gonna temporarily list them because anybody who would have applied would have had Form I believe you're talking about under 3.
Yes.
So these are the Part A reference. So if you filled out a 60 DF Part A, you would check that box.
Oh, okay,
And so, the Part B is the form that we're trying to eliminate,
okay.
if that helps.
So this becomes part B.
Yeah, yes, sir.
In essence.
That is in essence what we're trying to complete here, yes.
Okay. Yet it doesn't say part B, does it need to, and does it matter?
At present, we will do is if the board finds pleasure in this update, we will need to go back and do minor modifications to the other forms to remove the reference to the Part Bs. And instead, we would put Form 6 ACF, which is the allowance completion form, and as identified up here. So in essence, yes, all of the Part Bs will be eliminated in its entirety, and we won't have a Part A or a Part B. It will require a little bit of cleaning up for some, I'm sure there's some other places that we have the Part B referenced that, you know, we'll need to clean up, but we'll track that stuff down and generally, if this finds your approval, we can handle those other details.
Other than consolidating those items as listed under number 3, are there any other changes to the form that we need to be aware of?
Mr. Chairman, board members, I do not believe that there are any other changes, just, you know, I just want to make sure though that I was clear that, you know, and your agenda does say under 5.3.2 that this would be minor modifications to these other forms where we just replace the, you know, the reference to Part B completion with this new number 6 ACF.
Okay, thank you. Haley, did you see all this?
Yeah, I just have one minor edit. So in that top box, there just needs to be an addition of 646F Part A in that bolded language. It seems to be left out.
Are you clear on where she's describing this?
Yes, so that would be the reference to the geo heating and cooling exchange well. And you identified that that was omitted from the list in the upper box, which is a great catch, Haley, appreciated. And that does track with something that should be in that box. So that is a quality control piece there. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Haley. Any other questions or comments? No. Hearing none, if you're ready for public comment, I'll take public comment. Any public comment on this at this time before we take actions? No. None here. Anybody online?
If anyone online has a public comment, please raise your hand and I will allow you to speak. Seeing no public comment.
No public comment. If the board is ready, we'll take action to approve this. 6A CF, allowance notice of completion form.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to accept the 6A CF allowance completion form
As amended.
as amended.
Okay, sir, thank you. Motion by George.
I'll second.
Second by Ken. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, approved. Thank you.
Thank you, board members.
That puts us at item number 6, existing use registrations, OE and board MOU, council and water engineer.
That's right.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned that. So before we
Did we get new light bulbs or something?
No, they're just,
I'm gonna have to go
they're
get my
just
sunglasses.
on, they're not usually on.
Oh,
Yeah, that's it.
Is that
Yeah.
where we need to be?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just
Getting a
mostly,
Yeah.
the brightness is fine, it's just they're shining right in our eyes.
Okay, does anybody want the fan? Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. I was like, kind of thinking it's too bright here.
Well, the
I'm not
brightness is-
smart enough to figure out that
Well, the brightness is fine, it's just that actually the ones off the side are kind of shining right in our eyes.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
All right, item number 6.
oh, yeah.
Haley, would you like to kick this one off?
Sure. So just a quick note to Ethan, just before we start, I think the version that at least is online is a older, like one older version than what was provided after Anna's comments. But that's okay. We'll just work in and read it into the record. So that's fine, but just wanted to make sure you were aware.
Thank you.
Are we talking about item 6?
Correct.
Okay,
There's just one minor change that needed to be in there, but we can talk through it when we get to it. So this MOU became a need when the OE staff began having meetings with the DNRC about the transfer of the 180-day and suspended registrations. The board should be familiar with both of those concepts. We've had recent discussions on those types of registrations. And so what this MOU is doing is essentially creating an internal procedure between the board's transfer to the OE. In the compact, there's a timeline trigger for when the office needs to review these registrations and get them out the door. And that timeline begins when the board transfers it to the office of the engineer. So this MOU is that process, like how is the board and the office of the engineer going to operate internally?
So, additionally, part of the reason that this MOU came to be was we realized that DNRC had some constraints on how they could transfer things to the board and in our office on the short side of things. And what we here at the Office of the Engineers really need is a more detailed and dynamic process where we can receive applications in batches that are appropriately matched with our current staffing and workload. And then additionally, and perhaps more significantly for us, when we receive applications for new allowances in areas that have existing pending or suspended registrations, we feel that it is prudent to process those pending and suspended registrations to make sure that the board's directions on total allowances and permit exceptions within designated areas can be achieved. We would otherwise not know what those final annual volumes might be if we don't go ahead and initiate and complete a review of the suspended or pending registration. So that leaves us at a spot really trying to ask for a scenario where the office would receive the batches upon request and in amounts requested, but then also individual registrations that are specifically asked for by applicant, geocode, or other qualifier, water right element qualifier. So I hope that helps to better explain why we think that it would be a good idea to just have the board receive all of these registrations and then distribute those to the office in accordance with this, MOU.
So this is an MOU, as I understand it, between the Office of Engineer and the board. Describing how the 180-day filings would be first transmitted to the board and held until the Office of Engineer requests them according to this MOU, and then we would transmit them to the Office of Engineer. Basically, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. For the record, why?
So this gets back to what I started to explain with the timeline trigger. So the Office of the Engineer, like other water right applications that might come into the office, in this case, these are registrations. There is a trigger for the Office of the Engineer to begin the review process, meaning once something happens, there's a certain time that they have to get the evaluations done and out the door. In this case, it's a short timeline, and so we're trying to balance the office's workload with what the compact's language is for that trigger point. So given what it is, it's basically once the board transfers these registrations to the office, that's when the time starts. So not when the DNRC would transfer it to the board. That's where this kind of balance comes into play and why we felt the need for an MOU.
That's fine. So is there a deadline, trigger point, or otherwise a time frame for DNRC to transmit these records to the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, there was, that has passed, given how much time it's taken to like get the board up and running, get WIRIS or RIS as DNRC calls it up and running. But that is something that DNRC has already stress tested with their council. So I think even Blair is online and he can explain more about their side of that.
Would the board like to hear that?
Sure.
Yes, okay, yes, please.
Hello.
Blair. Hi, Blair.
Hi. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the board. I just letting you all that I'm here, and I suppose my only comment right now is that we're working through the processes to determine the exact timeline, but we have some meetings already scheduled with Ethan and other staff and other folks at DNRC, and hopefully we can get you a timeline. I'm hoping in the next few weeks. So that process is going smoothly. We're working on it. Although the original timeline was long ago, I think we're well on our way to giving you an exact date that transfer from DNRC to the board will happen.
Thank you, Blair. Any questions for the board members? No. Okay, thank you, Blair. So for Ethan and Haley, the records will be transferred from DNRC to the board. Where do we keep them?
Your garage, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I'll have to go build one.
We have,
Mechanically, how does this work?
sure, Haley, do you want to kick that off also, because you're the first part of those mechanics?
Sure. And this was also something that we had already mentioned to the DNRC as well as a possible mechanical option. But how it would work is the DNRC would transfer the scanned registrations to your board council, so my office, where it would be housed for the board. And once the OE needed registrations and requested them as written in the MOU, then the board from our office will transfer those to the Office of the Engineer for review.
Okay. So, so they're in your garage.
Yeah,
Well,
or whatever you're calling it now.
So they're electronically transferred or hard copies?
There are both, to my knowledge, and so there is a follow-up meeting, I think happening this week, Ethan, on the management of those hard files, and DNRC is gonna give a presentation to the Office of the Engineer on how it would like to store some of those hard files, but yes, the DNRC does have scanned images that they will transfer electronically.
Okay, and, not to put too fine a point on it, but I'm assuming, like, I won't assume anything, how those are managed and, by the board, through your office, is covered under our contract with you? Or do we need to add that or manage that as well?
Nope, that service would be provided under the contract, and then all, I did mention to the DNRC that any of those transfers would also need to include the chair and the vice chair as well.
I guess I have to go build a garage. Any other questions?
Get rid
by
of
the
storage unit.
board members? Yeah, absolutely. Any questions by the board members? No. Any idea what kind of paper volume we're talking about? Just, I was curious.
3,000 folders.
It looks like Mike,
File cabinet,
up and no.
we have a hand up from,
Oh, I see Blair has a hand up, so Blair.
Yeah, the exact number of files between the suspended registrations and the 180-day registrations is approximately 2,700 water right registrations, and the physical paperwork is, I think, anywhere from a few pages to many more per registration.
Hey,
so are they all in one file cabinet or two file cabinets?
They're on a couple shelves, and some in the Iron Mountain facility in Helena, and Nancy Hughes is eager to tell you all about it in our meeting coming up.
Great, great.
okay, well, I just wanted to make sure we know how big of a garage Haley has to build. Thank you. Any other comments on this?
Mr. Chairman, board members, I do want to bring to your attention that this particular MOU also contemplates the tribes registrations. So this would be all registrations and a process that we would follow for receiving all of the, I'm gonna say,
So it essentially double that number.
yeah, I mean, we don't know yet, but sure.
Yeah.
I don't think that they're done, so that's why we don't know, but yeah, double that number, and the format for the ones that we would expect to receive from CSKT are different also, in that and that might be premature to tell you exactly how that's gonna look, but it's gonna be different.
Yeah, okay. Okay. And so are we looking for action to approve this?
Yes, sir.
If you do public comment,
Yeah, I will. So you guys ready for public comment on this? Yes. Okay, any public comment on the memorandum of understanding that we've been discussing? No. No comment here in-house, anybody online?
If anyone online has a public comment, please raise your hand and I will allow you to speak. Seeing no public comment,
No public comment, so if you're ready, we'll take a motion to approve this memorandum of understanding.
I'll move to approve this memorandum of understanding, regarding the transfer of existing use registrations to the office engineer.
Motion by Ken,
I'll second.
second by Georgia, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, approved. Thank you, Ethan, thank you, Haley, thank you, Blair. And anyone else who worked on that. OE personnel policies, here we go.
Jeez.
Chair and board members, I assume I'll just keep walking us through these items, or you want to do it different?
No, 7.1, I see.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, board members, you'll remember that you had passed a vehicle use policy for the Office of the Engineer. Much appreciated. It's good policy. In our review, we did notice one small gap, and hope that you would consider the revision, which is Haley, it's just one revision on page 2, right?
For the vehicle policy?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I believe so.
And it's all in highlighted in yellow,
Yes.
and that the edit would be to the previous version required forward-going vehicle infractions to be reported, but this contemplates reporting past and current vehicle infractions.
What does that mean? For example, past in private vehicles, are you talking that if an individual has had an accident sometime in the past, we're requiring them to tell us?
What if I got a speeding ticket when I was a teenager?
Yeah, I mean,
I think it needs more language to say during employment operations or something like that. I don't see how we can ask somebody to give them your
Teenage years.
driving record. Yeah, I sure as hell don't want to.
well, that's my question. I just, do we need to clarify that a bit more?
Yeah,
How about, I guess, we could have something in here that, that either currently or in the future affect your, driver's license or insurability.
So how would an insurance company? I guess that's the genesis of the request. So the office has an insurance policy on a vehicle. You hire somebody to come and work for you. The office insurance wants to know what their driving record is like. How far back would the insurance company go? 6 months, a year? I don't know the answer to that, but it seems like that's the impetus for the question, right? We got to be in compliance or have to provide key information to our insurer. But I don't know how far back they'd want to go.
well, I don't know if we even have to do that, you know,
Oh, okay.
when we hire somebody, I think it says that they have to have a valid driver's license. And that's pretty much the extent of it.
That's it.
So I could see adding some clarification to this, that if the office vehicle is in use and somebody's using their vehicle during office hours, office related work, and they got a ticket, but I know I had one instance where that happened. Somebody got a ticket while they were using their car, and I was like, well, is the office gonna pay for it? And like, no, you got the ticket, you know, so. I don't,
Well, let's start,
Yeah.
let me start with this question.
why?
Is this intended to provide information only during the time someone is performing official business for the board? Or are we talking about providing information that is our personal information outside of business for the board?
Mr. Chairman, board members, because we have an insurance policy that, requires people to have a driver's license. I think the actual language that we use is, driver's license in good standing. But, I was trying to double check that and it's too much to juggle. Because we have, folks that are driving our vehicles, it is a requirement that if in your personal life, you incur some traffic situations that affect your license or your insurability, that you report that to this office if you're gonna be on the, on our list of people who are eligible to drive the company vehicle.
I'm just trying to clarify what that means in terms of the past.
Sure. So, when I was working for the state, it was really anything that would contribute to current points against your driver's license. And so, that was the only thing that you had to report. And then foregoing, if you got any tickets, motor vehicle tickets of any kind, you had to report those. And, yearly, there was like a refresh where, you had to, they would double check to make sure you still didn't have anything. But there was also, you sign off on an agreement that you would let your supervisor know if you had an incident that affected your driver's license or insurability.
You guys clear on this or?
I'm not comfortable with how it's currently worded. I get the reason for it. I'm just Googling up a few things. So it says employers in Montana can ask for an applicant's past driving record, but you need the employee's consent before that's given. And then how far back you go, I think should be better defined. Like, I don't know the answer to that. How do they calculate points on your license? Do they go back to your teenage years, or is there like a 5-year cutoff? I have a very good driving record. I just want to say, no points. So I was a good little uptight driver as a teenager.
Yeah, Haley, what's the purpose of this sentence? From your-
Without having it in front of me, my recollection is this was just to basically line up with what the insurance policy is. Progressive, it's 3 years back, that they, for employees that are going to be added on to the insurance policy.
Maybe we can clarify that this is tied to being in compliance with the insurance policy. Cause right now, you don't have it in front of you, it says, all operators, whether operating a board-owned vehicle or a privately owned vehicle, must report past and current vehicle infractions to their immediate supervisor.
Yeah, for board business, in doing board business, could be added, and then, past, like for the past 3 years could be, put on there too, just to be in line with the insurance policy.
Anything like that clarifies it would be helpful.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to specify the language right now or have it brought back?
I'd like to brought that.
And would like it brought back? Roger?
Yeah,
Yeah, I want more.
For what it's worth, I'm gonna read to you the state. I was able to find the state one here that says a state employee required to drive as part of the employee's job shall report any single driving infraction of 5 or more conviction points according to the schedule in 61-11-203 MCA accumulated while driving a state vehicle or a personal vehicle for state business to the employee's supervisor within 10 days of the conviction. And it goes on to say, the state employee required to drive as part of the employee's job shall report an accumulation of conviction points of 12 or more according to the schedule, same schedule, while driving a personal vehicle for. That seems like it's the same thing over again, sorry.
Well,
But
can we just, since the board would like this brought back, have you and Haley get your heads together on the exact language for that edit, and then we can move on.
Sounds good,
Yeah,
thank you.
I think the state may have its own self-insurance, like federal government, which is maybe the reason for that.
Yeah.
So I'd be actually more comfortable with the alignment with the insurance policy.
Yeah, I think what we just talked about, Haley, would that work for you?
Yep, I can just add that clarifying language so that we're staying within the terms of the progressive insurance that we have.
Okay, all right. All right, we'll have that come back. .2.
Mr. Chairman, board members, this is a discussion about administrative leave. Catching up here.
I think if we don't have a document in front of us to look at,
Cindy, can you pull the personnel policies up and go to 6.07? Sure. Haley, is this something that you had rewritten? Didn't we used to have a section on administrative leave that described like things like office closures due to weather or?
I mean, I had a comment on the side there. So my edit was to remove the list because it should be broad and at the discretion of the supervisor. So Sydney, if you want to click open my comment on the side there, then the board can read that. You just click on it, yeah. So that was the change I made to it. If there's any questions, I can answer them.
I don't see the.
Okay, I see it now.
Oh, over there.
my head's in the way. Can you make it a little bigger, Sydney? Well, on comment there. I can get it if you can.
You see around me, George?
Yes, that's good. Thank you.
Haley, question. Your comment says also an employee may volunteer to go on administrative leave. How does that work?
That's what it is, I think.
Sorry, I was trying to click my audio the whole time. So, I'm not exactly sure how the mechanics would work with the office, but an employee can volunteer, to take time away. It as just a way to basically use their time in a different capacity. So, how that works, I mean, there's a volunteer program where you could transfer it to employees. There's a volunteer where you can use it as maybe you want to volunteer it back to the employer to get overtime or however an employee wants to use it, but there are options. I was just putting it in there as there are options of doing volunteer programs with administrative leave.
Yeah, Roger.
Do we have a definition for administrative leave?
Can you pull back over to the corrections?
I don't even know what it is.
Screen here, and that's what I was trying to do is make a list of the types of things that we would use administrative leave for, and I know that we don't always like lists, but I really, on this particular one, I liked having this list because it sort of set expectations on when I might, or the board chair or the vice chair, or the entire board may use, administrative leave. And I kind of thought the list sort of helped to define what it was intended to be.
Maybe if you had one other addition to the line list where it was at the discretion of the board or the water engineer, just cover unforeseen circumstances.
Yeah, so, and also just another clarification. So, I mean, the general definition is it is just a paid absence from work. That is what an administrative leave is. Now, it's typically used for personal situations, so like family emergency. Maybe there are conflicts within the workplace. While there's a situation being investigated, an employee can request administrative leave at that time as well, or upon mutual agreement between the employer and the employee. So those are typically what it's used for. But the general definition is just a paid absence from work.
A paid absence from work, other than personal leave or sick leave or other kind of leave that's offered as a benefit. And it's at least personally of the mind that administrative leave needs to be approved by the board, but that's just me, so.
So if we have like emergency travel restrictions for 3 hours in the morning, that is the time, that's what my mind and what my past use of administrative leave would be for, and that you would have the person managing the office that day be, authorized that folks could,
Such a snow day.
delay their start for an amount of time based on whatever occurrence there is, and that, that would be a paid administrative leave. The utility of the administrative leave would be that it should be something that could be authorized by an office decision maker on the fly to deal with real world circumstances. So that would be, that'd be the main the first listed issue about whether safety or health concerns is the main, item for administrative leave. The second main item that I could think of would be, temporary cessation of duties, as required to investigate allegations of misconduct, et cetera. So, but it'd be nice to have some of these other items in there, and really the goal of this was to set expectations for how we would address emergency closures, closures due to staffing or training issues.
No, I'll repeat my suggestion. I don't have any particular problems if it had that disclaimer at the end, that the board or engineers will authorize this.
That was a good, good ad. And also, this was drafted before the board, approved its wellness plan. So originally, we had thought we would just code wellness leave as administrative leave. But that was modified to have a special designation for wellness. So that does need to get corrected and get replaced with the language that Ken just described, if the board was willing to keep the list.
Yeah, Ken, you're suggesting your language, if we keep the list.
If you keep the list,
Okay,
but tell you, I prefer Haley's just short and general. Definition. Paid time off. As approved by the engineer or the board.
board members,
I would agree with Kevin that it would, be approved by the board or by the OE.
Do we need to get more direction though? I mean, if I were Ethan, how would I know which ones require our approval and which ones don't?
And typically the use of this needs to be like immediate. I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's the thing is like, we don't, there's not like time to have a board meeting or always even get in contact with a board member. And, and I'm not trying to put us in a pressure cooker, but I'd rather know in advance that I can operate, and it's within your
Right.
direction and how that should look.
I think the way it's phrased, engineer or the board. It's not who gets to do what, it's, we have a backup plan.
Okay,
Well, if the
So-
engineer can't be found, then the board can do it.
okay.
That makes sense.
Well, and just to clarify too, so that second sentence on there, the board and the OE may allow, that's for regular pay and benefits. But if you see the line below, it does say specifically that it would be authorized by the employee's immediate supervisor. So that gives the immediate response, if Ethan had to approve administrative leave.
So the second question, sentence in there says the board and the OE may allow an employee on administrative leave to receive regular pay and benefits. And to me, I just envision that this administrative leave is administrative leave with regular pay and benefits. So, or does this contemplate that there's some administrative leave that doesn't have pay?
I would agree.
No.
I didn't write that language, so I'm not sure where that came from. The edits that I provided were the ones in red and track changes.
Yeah, right now, we're talking about who can approve it.
Okay, well, I'm seeing other items that need to get fixed, so.
I like employees immediate supervisor, because that could be the board. Keep it simple.
I would like it'd be good to have it where it could. So like if I don't supervise somebody in the office, but authorize administrative leave for weather conditions for 3 hours in the morning. You know, would it need to be an or instead of or an and instead of an or on who can authorize it? I'm just trying to think through it here.
We will see it end.
Okay,
Just see those employees and immediate supervisor.
I think while if we get away from the list, that's, you know, fine too. But what's rattling in my head is some kind of general language that talks about when administrative leave can be used. And I think we're talking about urgent and emergency situations where other regular leave is not. Appropriate.
Beyond the employees,
Yeah, I don't have the, you know, exact language, but that's kind of what's in my head.
So Clayton, you'd rather have that definition than on a case by case basis? Is that what you're thinking?
Or maybe in addition to,
In addition to, okay, so I can find more definitions.
So I would like to suggest, because Ethan raises a good point, that second sentence that's in there, that needs to be addressed, I would suggest deleting it. And then after the end of the first sentence, so relieve an employee of their normal job responsibilities, put on there without loss of pay or charge to leave.
is it changing?
can we make those edits on the fly here?
I'm trying to, I'm just, is it changing up there?
I don't see any change.
Okay, so you're gonna have to make the edits.
Okay,
So even that first one, I guess it's temporary relieves an employee of their normal job responsibilities. Well, if you say we're going on administrative leave because we've got a big storm, why wouldn't people work remotely then?
If we had that option,
Since we've got a
for
remote
sure,
work.
yeah, just
So I don't,
if their
I mean,
computers
that
here.
just sounds like you're off, have fun. You know, this is a paid PTO day, so.
Not everybody takes their laptop away from the office. And so there may not be, option for remote work. Most of us would have that option, and you do.
You know, it's one of those deals where I think everybody understands what administrative leave is when you see it, but you don't know how to define it.
Yeah,
I think everybody agrees that administrative leave needs to be a tool available. The
Okay,
question is, how do we exactly define that? So let's, if you wanna continue to riff on this today, let's do that. Otherwise, I would suggest, you know, maybe we work on it and come back to it.
Okay.
But I think that's just my thought. Georgia.
the sentence, I looked it up. So after sentence one, you've got administrative leave is a type of leave which temporarily relieves an employee of their normal job responsibilities. And then, according to Google, it's used in situations where it's not safe or appropriate for an employee to remain in the workplace. Would you want to add that kind of sentence to kind of better describe what we're looking at here?
Yeah, maybe. The other thing I'm thinking is that it's leave that the board and or administration can authorize that is beyond all other existing available leave.
Okay.
Something to that effect, because, leave is available if someone needs, but we need to be able to have that as a tool. How we define that is, I think, just important as well. Yeah, sure.
So do you want to add a sentence after the first sentence to say this leave will be used when it is not safe or appropriate for an employee to come to work?
I thought that was a good one. If you Google stuff.
To Google everything.
It gets at what I'm really trying to do is I just wanted to have some section, some way to close the office if nobody's driving around. Specifically, we often tie into the tribes have this, what's the system called that the tribes use for their automatic emergency alerts?
Oh,
Right.
ours is rave.
Rave.
Okay.
And so we try, like, if there's a rave alert that goes out that says emergency travel only, we try to like not have people have to drive in that situation.
Every fall I get one saying there's a grizzly bear on campus. Don't come in or stay in your office.
And I'm willing to, I wanna go back and say, I wanna keep this as simple as possible too. So I'm willing to say that the board, that administrative leave can be authorized by the board or the executive officer or immediate supervisor. I just want, maybe suggest that if authorized by the executive officer or an immediate supervisor, that the board be notified.
Oh, okay.
That way, in the event, chances are it won't happen, but in the event we are notified and we don't agree that it should have been administrative leave, then we can adjust that later. Just that it's allowed and either approved by the board or the office of engineer or immediate supervisor, but if the office of engineer or immediate supervisor authorizes administrative leave, that the board be notified in writing. That's, if we left it at that, I'd be happy, but that's just me. Just another thought.
Hold that thought for a second,
Yeah.
go back to George's suggestion. I don't like the safe or appropriate, I prefer safe or otherwise inappropriate.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. There we go.
Okay, and I like Clayton's, someone's gotta be notified. It could just be a call or email to one of you two.
I think just notify the board, that way, it's happened, it's done. But if we need to adjust that, we can do that at a later date.
Sounds good.
And just trying to find a way to allow it and keep it simple, but
For administrative leave, can you put authorizations of administrative leave? And then, I don't know, is administrative leave capital? As soon as reasonably. As soon as practically. Possible after its authorization,
Don't just say as soon as practical.
as soon as practical.
for me, it's mainly that we're notified. I mean, we're notified and, then we can always follow up on it at the next meeting if something, if we need to make adjustments. I wouldn't probably do anything at the time I'm notified.
Up there where it says the leave will be used when it is not safe or it is otherwise inappropriate. It is, that is an important need there.
Yeah.
Um, So, it's unclear from the track changes who the administrative leave can be authorized by. Let's get that straightened out here.
I was suggesting the board or office of engineer or immediate supervisor.
Okay, yeah, that's great.
Is that, I don't know, you guys,
We might run into a wrinkle. We still have some winter ahead of us, right? So what if we have an ice storm? We need to have a 3-hour delay to get the office open. Ethan's not Rhonda's direct supervisor, so that means one of us would have to approve, or you, but we're not here, can't get on the phone, or our phone's turned off. What do we do then?
I think what Clayton just said is that they're oars, so like, I could still authorize it even though
There you go, okay.
she
Yeah.
isn't, is that what I understood you just
yeah, and
said?
Okay.
I'm just trying to, I mean, if Ethan had to, I mean, something come up and it had to be Ethan,
That's fine.
I would say Ethan use his best judgment and notify us this happened. And then we move on, and if we have to make adjustments or corrections at the next meeting, we do it.
Sounds perfect.
So we'll make that say authorized by the OE, I think is what I heard you say, or do you want it to say the water engineer?
I think it's fine.
Okay.
We use OE and the rest of the policy on.
It's a mixed bag of tricks,
Okay.
frankly, and it sort of depends, you know, but this works, I mean, this at least works for my immediate needs. I'm pretty much always available to, figure out if there needs to be a closure or not, so, thank you. Can we put the like, how do we term it? Concurrence on today?
Can I just ask why the entire board is still left in there? That just seems like way too many pots or hands in the pot, you know?
Agreed, Haley.
Kitchen.
You don't want to get that call at 6 in the morning, do you, George?
I'm up at that time.
You're up, okay. Everybody call George.
I'm usually up by
No,
4.
I'm usually up
Don't
too.
call me before the crack of noon.
Ken's like, don't call me then.
Great, here's one.
You guys, good?
I'm good.
All right, let's try it.
Okay. We wanna do 7.3?
You guys want to do 7.0, take a break.
Oh, sorry, it's section 10.06. Oh, yeah, sorry.
You want a break?
Yep.
3 o'clock. All right. Take 10 or 15. All right. All right, thanks. We're back on OE personnel policy, so I think we can get through this pretty quick. I know a couple things, not much there left on this, and then Ethan has got some pending project he needs to really have some time on, so sooner we can get through this and get through our executive session, I think would be better.
Okay.
7.3, Ethan, you wanna summarize that? I didn't know that was still something we're dealing with.
I don't know that it's something that we, ever really dealt with. So it's in there for the board to figure out if, what their policy is on overnight office use. If we've got hydrologist working on a project late up in Flathead, and you wanna provide an option for them to use the officer, right?
So I was the one that originally had heartburn with this because I wasn't sure if there was anything in our lease that allowed for that. And I may have shared that in another meeting. I used to work in emergency management down in Idaho and Wyoming, and there was a gentleman who stayed overnight in a building he was renting on Main Street. It caught on fire, it burned down, and he died. And the family of the poor man that passed away sued the owner of the building, and it just turned into a hot mess. So I don't have any personal problem with Ethan or other staff staying here, as long as we have some language in our lease that specifies that. And I think Haley looked into it and Ethan looked into it and we were fine, so.
Haley, Ethan,
What's the language say?
language in the lease, are we starting with that? Are we allowed to do it? Or prohibited from doing it?
The lease does not prohibit,
Can you scroll
that kind of use.
Oh, I wouldn't say it that way. I would say the lease is silent on that topic.
Okay, the lease is silent on that topic.
It neither prohibits nor allows.
I'm sure that it's shared, so I'm gonna leave this for just a second.
So let's go to accommodations. We have accommodations here?
Not
Are
really.
we set up to accommodate that?
I mean, there's a full bathroom upstairs. There's a space. And he, I mean, I don't think somebody's like expecting to have bunk beds or.
Well, so though in my experience, and George, you guys have done as much field work as anybody in the tribal organization ever over the years, including winter work. I have never encountered anyone having the need to do that.
I never have either.
And so, you know, yeah, I know that urgent and emergency situations happen, but
I take it as a personal responsibility with my crew to make sure everybody's in, and if I'm not there, I appoint someone to make sure that everybody's in on time. And if not, then they can get a hold of me and we'll start looking for them.
and as a,
Oh, back to the office, yeah.
and as a personal matter, I think that if you know, there's an urgent or emergency situation, I think we have to deal with that. You know, I just have not run into that, so I'm not.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, I'm not. I mean. But put it this way, I don't see a need for it, but you guys can convince me otherwise and we can find a solution to it, that's fine, but I don't see a need for it.
So in 1983, the storm blew into Missoula. You probably remember this. And from the time I was able to get out of class and walk 5 blocks home, every single tree in that 5 blocks were turned over. 6 inches of snow had fell, that they got up to like 20. So what about a signal station here? The storms like that do happen.
Or the opposite end of the administrative leave situation where you're at work and now you can't drive anywhere.
Yeah.
And so like as primary, this isn't like we're not setting up a regular crash pad, but we really need to have an option. At least know in advance what the option is, if under those extenuating circumstances, if under the situation where somebody has to go out and I'm like kind of guessing about hypothetically, but I don't really know about it. Let's say you got, let's say you needed, you know, somebody to go, attend a late night meeting, you know, for water, use and they're here till 10:30. And they're a commuter, you wanna just let them crash here and call it good, as long as they check in with their immediate supervisor, or do you wanna have something else?
Are there alternative places where you can stay in on that?
Not a lot. There's the Nine Pipes.
Oh, okay.
Is the only thing I really.
That's still a bit of a drive, isn't
Well,
it?
there are Polson, nothing really in
It's that
there.
bad, you're not gonna wanna drive to Polson either.
Yeah, I'm just. Yeah, and I mean, we have to pay for that.
Yeah,
Yeah, we should, like, so like, we either have like a free option or we pay. But what, whatever, needs to happen, can happen here. That's it. It's really all this is be,
So to give a recap, Georgia had provided a comment on this section when it was in the policy, which she already explained. And then I looked into, the applicable laws that would apply to this. So, I mean, under work comp laws, as long as the employee is performing work duties or was in response to work duties and approved by the supervisor, then they would be covered if there were any sort of emergencies that occurred or accidents that occurred, like somebody fell down the stairs. But I did heavily edit this section to just reduce it to the 2 sentences that are do not have strike through on it.
That makes it
you
simple.
wanna change the view to simple markup for
yeah, Roger.
simplicity's sake?
I guess we just went through that whole section on administrative leave to address inclement weather conditions and everything else, so I guess going back to this thing, I was gonna read, if you could go back to where you were with all the markup on it, if you would.
Sorry.
I was gonna suggest maybe it just says, an OE employee will not stay overnight within the office unless there is an emergency situation.
Yeah, I think we have to. I mean, you're along the lines of what I'm thinking, that if we're gonna do it at all, it must be under some emergency condition.
Yeah. That precludes travel or something.
Yeah,
And I guess I'm still not clear, if our lease is silent, what does that mean? Like, if something happened,
yeah,
God forbid, if something happened and the lease is silent, do we have any liability?
so Haley, there's a question for you.
Yeah, so that's what I was getting at with the work comp issues. So if they're performing work duties, or let's say they were at a meeting, it just got late, it's approved, that was for work functions. And so it would be covered under work comp laws. So yes, the employer would be covered for any sort of physical injuries that might occur, or fire hazards or anything like that.
Thank you, that's helpful.
What about the family of the injured employee? Turns around and says, board.
That's what
Yeah.
happened in Idaho.
You wanna speak up for Haley?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you hear that, Haley?
Yeah, I did. I mean, that's a separate issue, outside of what this would be dealing with. I mean, that would be more of just like a general liability issue. It's a valid point. But at this point, the board can only control the coverage for any injuries that occur to the employee while under the employer's watch.
Okay. So if we are going down that path, You know, if you look at just the sentence that's there, two sentences that's there. Unfortunately, it raises more questions for me. Do we need to specify anything else? Having to do with what's allowed or not allowed while they're staying here? And do we need to specify what accommodations, emergency accommodations, we will have available in such situation? Let's say it happened right now. Or, you know, tomorrow. You know, you got employees sitting in here, something happens. What do we have?
Eat. Shelter.
Is it enough? Oh, I'm just asking the question.
Yeah, these are
Because
good.
I don't know, I don't know.
Well, I guess I look at this more like if there's a, you know, in our case, a natural, not a natural disaster, but a storm. Where somebody can't go anywhere, but it's just like if you went then and had, they opened up a gymnasium to go stay in or something like that, you know, and so. Then what are they gonna have there? Are they gonna have cots and blankets and stuff? I don't know, you know, so. That's the only scenario I think it's viable.
Well,
I would worry once again about being too specific, because when you get specific, whatever happens is never gonna be in that list. I shouldn't say never, but
okay, whether we specify it or not, in your mind, do we need to have an emergency kit set up here so that in case somebody needs it, they can use it?
I think so.
Okay, we need to
Blankets
define
and a
what,
cot for two.
so we need to figure out what that is, and I don't know if that needs to be part of the policy, but we need to figure out what that is and have that set up.
Mr. Chair, that's a good point, and it's something that is like would be addressed in the safety policies of personnel policies.
I didn't hear that. Andy, could you repeat it?
I said that in particular about an emergency kit is something that is addressed in the safety policies of the personnel policies.
Okay.
So we would address that, but address it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Which is fine, so if we do this and put this in place, then we need to address that. But if not today, but by our next meeting. Yeah, so, just a straw check-in here. Are you in favor of allowing this? I'm gonna go around here. Just wherever you're at right now.
Yeah, my gut reaction's no.
Okay, George?
I would say emergency. You know, if the weather got that bad that you couldn't get anywhere, most people that live here know how to drive in that type of weather.
Mhm.
And if I was here and that happened, I'd go home. So, well, I'm kind of torn on it. I would say no.
Yes.
I guess, like I said, I would just caveat that one sentence to say only in the case of an emergency situation. And let it go at that.
I'm at a general no, like I said, except that I would have to be convinced. Interesting.
But I guess
Okay.
otherwise I'd say no to that. This gets too complicated otherwise.
Yeah,
The qualifier for me is we do have so many staff that have a pretty significant
Yeah.
commute.
Mhm.
And, you know, that's a real thing. So I get why that it was brought up. I do, and I want to have compassion for that. It's just,
well, let's get Roger's language in there. Where do you want it, Roger?
Okay, so I was just gonna say. An employee may not stay overnight within the office. We know it's a physical office. You can get rid of physical. Within the office unless there is an immediate emergency situation. That, that precludes travel.
Should say safe travel rather than travel.
Pardon me?
It should say safe travel rather than travel.
Okay, safe travel.
And I would move unless at the beginning of that. Yep. To in front of specifically.
And after emergencies, you should say emergency situation.
So the alternative is that an employee who misuses or violates policy may be subject to discipline, misuse or violation, and that means that somebody stays here without approval, and it's not an emergency.
It stays there or it's not an emergency.
I don't, not saying we add the language, I'm just asking the question.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean by this?
Yes.
If you guys, I mean, read the language carefully, if you're good with the language, then we'll give it a head nod, but we better make sure we put something in the safety section of the personnel policies about, accommodations. Cause I hate, that's what I think, but that's just me. Well, let's take a look at the language drafted now without all the red line now. So this is where we're at right now. Language a little awkward there.
Yeah.
I think if you take in the event of and replace it with unless.
Then just get rid of.
In the event of.
Unless there is. Yeah.
Yay, nay, yay. You're seeing head nods and thumbs up, we have concurrence. We have landed. And if Ethan would make a note that we need to go back and revisit the specific place and maybe Haley, somebody next meeting, point us to the specific place where we need to talk about accommodations. Sure.
Well, that's progress. That's been sitting there for a while. Check. It's done.
All right, it says other personnel policies, but I'm gonna suggest that maybe we're done. That's just me. You guys want to hear more? No.
That's fine.
Okay. So, announce next meeting. So at this point, we're looking at what's listed here is Wednesday, February 12th. You guys wanna keep that?
I can't do that one. But if you have a quorum, go for it.
I can do it.
I can.
I can.
Or I could participate up to a point via Zoom, but then I have to be somewhere in Kalispell at 5 o'clock.
Okay, you wanna keep it, or you guys wanna keep it or move the dates?
Let's say keep it.
Well. Okay. Next meeting. At this time, will be scheduled Wednesday, February 12th.
Mr. Chairman, board members, is that a 1 to 5 meeting?
Yeah, regular 1 to 5 meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Don't. Have it, we need public comments. To end here. Any final public comments? No more public available here. No physical audience, anybody online?
If anyone online has a public comment, please raise your hand and I will allow you to speak. Saying no public comment.
No public comment. So I'll take a motion to adjourn the public meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Roger, second by Ken, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned and going to move to our executive session. George, we're good to go for your
Yeah.
office space? All right.
Yeah, we're fine.
We will move over there. Do we need just us or is it Deacon?